When Jesus looked at humanity and declared, "You are gods," he wasn't speaking in riddles or engaging in hyperbolic religious rhetoric. He was unveiling something so earth-shattering, so fundamentally transformative, that once you truly understand it, your entire spiritual reality will never be the same again. This isn't about religion, denomination, or even belief systems. This is about recognizing who you actually are beneath the layers of conditioning that have kept you feeling small, separate, and powerless. Have you ever felt like there's an invisible wall between you and the divine? Like you're speaking into a void, desperately hoping someone on the other side is listening? What if I told you that this very feeling of separation is the greatest spiritual illusion ever perpetuated, and that Jesus himself gave us the key to shattering it completely? Has this ever happened to you? You've prayed with all your heart, poured out your soul in desperate petition, only to feel like your words evaporated into nothingness? There's a profound reason for that disconnect, and it has everything to do with the consciousness from which you're approaching the divine. Most of us have been taught to come before God as beggars at a king's door, as cosmic orphans seeking favor from a distant father, as limited beings reaching toward an unreachable source. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's what changes everything. Jesus wasn't teaching us to beg. He never modeled desperation in his spiritual practice. Instead, he demonstrated something radically different, a relationship with the divine built not on separation, but on recognition. When he said, "You are gods," he was pointing to your true identity, your actual nature, your real inheritance that exists beyond the false self you've been conditioned to accept as the totality of who you are. Think about the implications for just a moment. What if the divine nature you've been seeking externally has been residing within you all along? What if wholeness, abundance, wisdom, and peace aren't distant destinations you must struggle to reach, but inherent qualities of your true being that have simply been obscured by a fundamental misunderstanding? What if your prayers have been falling flat, not because God isn't listening, but because you've been operating from a premise of separation that was never true to begin with? This separation consciousness, this deeply ingrained belief that you are fundamentally disconnected from your source, is the invisible root of nearly all human suffering. It's why you strive yet never feel satisfied, why you seek yet rarely find, why you work so hard spiritually yet experience so little transformation. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover will fundamentally alter how you understand prayer, manifestation, healing, and your very purpose for being alive. The question isn't whether you can connect with the divine. The question is, are you ready to discover that you've never actually been disconnected at all? Because once that recognition dawns in your consciousness, everything shifts. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what made Jesus' approach to the divine so radically different from what most of us have been taught. When you look at the recorded prayers and spiritual practices of Jesus, something remarkable stands out. There's an unmistakable absence of begging, pleading, or desperate bargaining. He didn't approach prayer like someone trying to convince a reluctant deity to intervene. Instead, he spoke with a level of confidence that was rooted in something far more profound than positive thinking or religious optimism. This confidence wasn't born from arrogance or spiritual superiority. It was the natural expression of someone who had discovered a hidden truth about the fundamental relationship between the individual and the divine source. Jesus understood something that most spiritual seekers miss entirely. He recognized that the divine nature wasn't something he needed to acquire, attain, or earn through years of spiritual discipline. It was already his essential identity, the very foundation of his being, the reality that existed before any sense of separation ever took root in human consciousness. This is where the transformation in your own spiritual journey begins. When you realize that everything you've been seeking externally already exists within you as your original nature. The peace you're searching for isn't somewhere out there waiting to be discovered. The wisdom you think you lack isn't absent from your being. The abundance you're striving to manifest isn't separate from who you fundamentally are. These aren't distant goals on some spiritual horizon. They're the inherent qualities of your true identity that have simply been obscured by layers of conditioning and false beliefs about your relationship with the divine. Think about the profound impact this recognition has on your daily spiritual practice. When you approach prayer from the mindset that you're fundamentally separated from your source, every prayer becomes an exercise in bridging an imaginary gap. You're constantly reaching, striving, efforting to make contact with something that feels distant and unreachable. But when the truth dawns that your divine nature is your original nature, not something you lost and need to regain, not something you never had and must acquire, everything shifts at the deepest level. Your prayers stop being desperate pleas and transform into acts of conscious recognition. You're no longer begging for intervention from an external power. Instead, you're acknowledging what's already present, what has always been present, what could never be absent, because it's the very essence of your being. This isn't just a subtle change in terminology or a new technique to try. This is a complete revolution in consciousness that alters the entire trajectory of your spiritual journey. The struggle dissolves because you're no longer fighting against an illusion of separation. The striving falls away because you're no longer trying to become something you're not. What remains is a natural, effortless unfolding of the divine qualities that have been waiting beneath the surface of your awareness all along, ready to express the moment you stop blocking them with beliefs in your own limitation. Behind the scenes of this awakening is a fundamental shift in how you make decisions, how you respond to challenges, and how you navigate the ups and downs of human experience. When you truly grasp that your divine nature is your actual nature, not a spiritual ideal to aspire toward, you begin operating from a completely different level of consciousness, one that Jesus demonstrated perfectly in every interaction he had with the world around him. If this resonates with something deep inside you, write in the comments, "I recognize my true nature." Here's where this understanding becomes so revolutionary that it challenges everything conventional spirituality has taught us. When Jesus declared, "You are gods," he wasn't speaking metaphorically or trying to inspire you with poetic language. He was pointing to a concrete reality about your actual identity, that you are the living, breathing expression of divinity itself. Not a copy of it, not a representation of it, not something striving to reflect it. You are the direct expression of the divine source, manifesting in human form right now in this very moment, as you're listening to these words. This means that every breath you take, every thought that moves through your consciousness, every heartbeat pulsing through your body is divine activity expressing itself. The substance of your being isn't separate from the substance of the divine. You're not made of different material, operating on different principles, subject to different laws. The same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and governs the movement of atoms is the very intelligence animating your existence. This isn't inspirational theory to make you feel better about yourself. This is the hidden truth behind your existence that remains true, whether you believe it, understand it, or have even heard about it before today. The profound impact of this revelation becomes even clearer when we examine another statement Jesus made that perfectly aligns with "You are gods." When he proclaimed, "I and my Father are one," most religious traditions have interpreted this as Jesus making an exclusive claim about his unique divinity, something that separates him from the rest of humanity. But this interpretation completely misses the revolutionary nature of what he was actually revealing. Jesus wasn't drawing a line between himself and everyone else. He was unveiling a universal truth about the fundamental relationship every human being has with the divine source. Think about the transformation this understanding creates in your entire spiritual journey. For years, maybe decades, you've been taught that the goal of spirituality is to achieve oneness with God through dedicated practice, meditation, prayer, and spiritual discipline. The underlying message has always been that you're currently separate, and through enough effort, you might eventually arrive at connection. But what Jesus was revealing turns that entire paradigm completely upside down. This oneness isn't a distant destination you're traveling toward. It's not something you need to earn through spiritual performance or attain through years of practice. It's already the foundation of your existence, the bedrock reality upon which everything else rests. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel so these insights continue finding you, practical spiritual wisdom that creates real transformation in your life. Your spiritual journey, then, isn't about becoming something you're not. It's about recognizing what has always been true, but hidden beneath layers of conditioning, false beliefs, and the pervasive illusion of separation that society reinforces at every turn. Behind the scenes of your human experience, this divine reality has been present all along, waiting not for you to create it or achieve it, but simply to recognize it. Every decision you make from this recognition flows from an entirely different source than decisions made from separation consciousness. Every challenge you face looks completely different when viewed through the lens of your true identity, rather than through the limited perspective of the separate self. When this truth begins to dawn in your awareness, something shifts at the deepest level of your being. The struggle to reach God dissolves because you realize you've never actually been apart from the source. The anxiety about whether you're spiritual enough, doing enough, or worthy enough falls away because you recognize that your divine nature isn't based on performance, but on reality itself. If you've ever had even a glimpse of this profound truth, type in the comments, "I am divine expression." Now let me share with you a metaphor that makes this truth impossible to forget once you truly grasp it. Picture the vast ocean stretching endlessly before you, its surface alive with countless waves rising and falling in an eternal dance. Each wave has its own unique shape, its own momentary form, its own brief expression before returning to the depths. Now here's the revelation that changes everything. A wave is never separate from the ocean, trying desperately to become oceanic. It doesn't spend its existence striving to connect with the water around it. It doesn't question whether it's ocean enough or worry about earning its place in the sea. The wave already is ocean, expressing itself in temporary waveform. This is exactly the hidden truth about your relationship with the divine. You are not a limited human being reaching toward an unreachable God, struggling to bridge some cosmic gap between yourself and your source. You are divine life, temporarily expressing in human form. Just as the wave is ocean experiencing itself as wave, you are the divine experiencing itself as you. The wave doesn't need to transform itself into something it's not. It simply needs to recognize what it already is beneath the temporary appearance of separation. And when that recognition dawns, everything about how the wave experiences its own existence shifts completely. This understanding isn't just beautiful imagery or comforting spiritual philosophy. It has profound practical implications for your daily life that one of the great mystical teachers of the 20th century, Joel Goldsmith, dedicated his entire life to revealing. He discovered something that dissolves the very foundation of human suffering at its root. Behind the scenes of every form of pain you experience, whether physical, emotional, financial, or relational, lies one fundamental misperception: the belief in separation from your source. Every anxiety about the future stems from forgetting that the divine substance of your being can never be depleted. Every fear about lack comes from the illusion that you're somehow cut off from infinite supply. Every moment of feeling alone or abandoned arises from the false perception that you exist apart from the very source of life itself. Think about the transformation that occurs when this single misperception gets corrected. When you begin living from the consciousness that the divine isn't just metaphorically your source, but is literally the substance and reality of your being, your entire approach to life undergoes a revolution. You stop operating from scarcity mindset because you recognize that the infinite is expressing as you. You stop desperately seeking because you realize that what you're looking for is already present as your true nature. The decisions you make shift from fear-based reactions to expressions of the abundance that flows naturally when you're aligned with reality rather than fighting against illusion. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect or denying real human challenges. It's about approaching those challenges from a completely different level of consciousness. When you know, not just intellectually believe, but actually know at the core of your being that you are the ocean temporarily experiencing itself as a wave, problems that once seemed insurmountable begin revealing solutions you couldn't see from separation consciousness. Resources that seemed scarce start appearing naturally. Relationships that felt strained begin harmonizing without forced effort. The journey transforms from constant struggle against circumstances into a natural unfolding of the divine intelligence that's been operating as your life all along. If this metaphor awakens something in you, write in the comments, "I am the ocean." What happens next in your spiritual journey is nothing short of a complete recalibration of how you relate to the divine in every moment of your life. This isn't a minor adjustment or a slight shift in perspective. It's a fundamental transformation that rewrites the entire operating system through which you experience reality. For your entire life, up until this point, you've likely been operating from the assumption that you're a separate entity, standing outside of divine life, looking in, hoping to make contact, desperately trying to build a bridge to something distant and unreachable. But the moment this truth about your true identity begins to sink in, that boundary you've always felt between yourself and the divine starts dissolving like morning fog under the rising sun. You begin to recognize yourself not as someone trying to connect with God, but as an individualized expression of that same divine life, expressing itself right here, right now, through your unique human experience. Think about the profound impact this has on your daily existence. The sense of isolation that has haunted you dissolves because you realize you've never actually been alone. The anxiety about whether you're worthy of divine favor falls away because you recognize that worthiness isn't something you earn. It's inherent in the very fact of your existence as divine expression. Behind the scenes of this awakening, something extraordinary is happening. You're not becoming something new. You're simply removing the veils of misperception that have hidden your true nature from yourself all along. Now here's what makes this transformation so powerful in practical terms. It completely revolutionizes how you approach prayer and spiritual practice. Consider the stark difference in energy and consciousness between two people approaching the same challenge. The first person, still operating from separation consciousness, drops to their knees and desperately pleads, "Please God, help me. I can't do this alone. I need you to intervene in my situation." There's a palpable sense of lack in those words, a belief that divine help is something external that might or might not show up, depending on how convincingly they beg. Every word carries the weight of separation, the underlying assumption that they're fundamentally disconnected from their source and must somehow convince it to reach across that imaginary divide. But someone who has awakened to their divine nature approaches prayer from an entirely different level of consciousness. Their prayer isn't a desperate plea, but a powerful recognition. They don't beg for external intervention because they understand that divine intelligence isn't somewhere else. It's the very substance of their being, operating right here in this situation right now. Their prayer might sound something like, "I recognize divine wisdom present in this moment. I acknowledge the wholeness that is already here." Notice the transformation in energy. There's no straining, no begging, no anxiety about whether they'll be heard. Instead, there's a quiet confidence that comes from recognizing what's already true rather than trying to make something happen that isn't. This shift from asking to acknowledging, from pleading to recognizing, from desperate seeking to peaceful knowing, this is what alters the entire effectiveness of your spiritual connection. You're no longer throwing prayers into the void, hoping something out there catches them. You're aligning your conscious awareness with the reality that has been present all along, allowing what's already whole to express itself without the interference of separation beliefs blocking its natural flow. If this changes how you think about prayer, write in the comments, "Recognition, not begging." Now let me reveal what might be the most powerful demonstration of this truth in action, the way Jesus approached healing. When you examine the accounts of his healing ministry, something absolutely remarkable stands out that most people completely miss. Jesus never once begged God to reach down from some distant heaven and fix what was broken. He never pleaded for divine intervention as though it was something separate from the situation at hand. Instead, he simply acknowledged the divine presence that was already right there in that moment, with that person, in that circumstance. He recognized a profound spiritual principle that operates with the consistency of natural law. Where divine presence is truly acknowledged, wholeness must naturally express itself. This wasn't miraculous in the supernatural sense that most religious traditions have portrayed it. It was the natural manifestation of spiritual law working through someone who fully understood his divine identity and could recognize that same divine reality in others. Think about the revolutionary impact of this understanding. Healing stops being about desperately trying to fix something that's fundamentally broken. Instead, it becomes about revealing the wholeness that was never actually lost, only hidden beneath layers of false belief in separation and limitation. Behind the scenes of every healing Jesus performed was this simple but profound act of recognition, seeing beyond the appearance of disease or disorder to the divine reality that was present all along. If this video shifted something in you, tap that like button. It helps this message reach others who are ready to hear it right now. What this means for your own life is absolutely transformative. The divine resources you've been seeking, striving for, and desperately trying to attract aren't somewhere out there waiting for you to finally do enough or be enough to deserve them. They're your inheritance through the simple fact of your relationship with the source. Consider how inheritance actually works in human terms. A child doesn't beg their parents for genetic traits or family characteristics. They don't earn the color of their eyes through good behavior or convince their DNA to express certain qualities through persuasive arguments. These things are simply theirs by virtue of the relationship itself. The inheritance flows naturally, effortlessly, inevitably from the source to the expression. Your relationship with the divine operates on exactly the same principle. Peace, wisdom, abundance, creativity, strength, these aren't distant qualities you need to acquire through decades of spiritual effort or convince God to bestow upon you if you pray hard enough. They're inherent aspects of your divine nature, available to you right now through the simple fact of your essential connection to the Source. When this understanding truly takes root in your consciousness, everything about your spiritual practice undergoes a radical transformation. Your prayer life stops being this anxious, effortful striving to get something from somewhere else and becomes a restful knowing of what's already present. The desperate pleading dissolves into peaceful receiving. The entire energy shifts from struggle to allowance, from seeking to finding, from asking to acknowledging. The decisions you make from this mindset create completely different results than decisions made from separation consciousness, because they flow from abundance rather than scarcity, from wholeness rather than lack, from recognition of what is rather than fear of what isn't. If you're beginning to see inheritance differently, write in the comments, "It's already mine." Now let me share with you a practice that will anchor this recognition in your daily consciousness in a way that creates tangible transformation. This isn't complicated meditation requiring years of training or special techniques that only advanced practitioners can master. It's beautifully simple, yet profoundly powerful in its impact on how you experience every moment of your life. Each morning, before the demands and distractions of your day begin pulling you in 1,000 directions, carve out just 10 to 15 minutes to sit quietly with this truth. And here's what makes this practice so revolutionary. You're not going to ask God for anything during this time. That statement probably sounds strange given everything you've been taught about prayer and spiritual practice, but stay with me, because this is where the hidden power lies. Instead of presenting your list of needs and desires, instead of begging for solutions to your problems, you're simply going to acknowledge what's already true in this moment. Sit comfortably, breathe naturally, and let this recognition settle into your consciousness. I am divine expression right now. This breath moving through me, this awareness. Perceiving these words, this consciousness experiencing this moment, all of it is divine life expressing itself as me. As thoughts about problems, worries, or tomorrow's challenges inevitably arise, you don't fight them or try to suppress them. You simply and gently return to the recognition of what is beneath all those surface concerns. This practice isn't about creating something new or manufacturing divine qualities through the power of positive affirmation. You're not trying to convince yourself of something that isn't true or build up enough mental energy to manifest desired outcomes. Instead, you're acknowledging the reality that exists beneath the appearance of limitation, the truth that remains constant regardless of whether your conscious mind is aware of it or not. Behind the scenes of this simple morning practice, something profound is happening. You're training your consciousness to default to recognition rather than seeking, to awareness of presence rather than anxiety, about absence to knowing rather than hoping. But this transformation doesn't stop when your morning practice ends. Throughout your day, particularly in those moments when you feel yourself straining against circumstances, when anxiety starts tightening its grip, when frustration rises because things aren't unfolding according to your human timeline or preferences, these are the golden opportunities for what I call the pause and recognition practice. In that moment of tension, stop for just one breath. Not a special breathing technique, just one conscious, intentional breath. And as you take that breath, silently acknowledge this truth. Divine intelligence is operating in this situation right now. The shift that happens in that instant is remarkable. You can literally feel the weight lifting, the grip of control releasing, the anxiety dissolving, as you remember that you don't have to figure everything out through limited human will alone. This simple practice interrupts the habitual, pattern of separation consciousness that creates so much unnecessary suffering. It shifts you from the limited human perspective that sees only problems and obstacles to the broader divine perspective that recognizes intelligence operating even in situations that appear chaotic or challenging from the surface level. If this practice resonates with you, write in the comments, "I pause and recognize." Now let me reveal what might be the most profound shift this understanding creates in your daily experience, learning to live from cause rather than constantly reacting to effects. This is where the rubber truly meets the road, where abstract spiritual principles become tangible transformation in how you navigate the concrete circumstances of your life. Most people spend their entire existence reacting to the visible world around them, letting their emotional state, their decisions, their sense of possibility be dictated by whatever numbers appear on their bank statement, whatever symptoms show up in their body, whatever challenges emerge in their relationships or career. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Those visible conditions are effects, not causes. They're the surface-level manifestations of something much deeper, operating beneath the appearance. Your divine nature is the invisible reality behind all those visible forms and circumstances. So when you look at your bank account and see numbers that create anxiety or limitation, train yourself to see beyond those numbers to the infinite substance that is your true source. Those numbers are temporary effects, reflecting past consciousness. The divine substance expressing as your life is the permanent cause that can produce entirely different effects when you align with it, rather than reacting to what already manifested. When you look at your body and see symptoms, aging, or limitation, practice seeing beyond the appearance to the divine life that animates every cell, every breath, every heartbeat. That visible form is the effect. The invisible divine life flowing through it is the cause. This isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about recognizing a deeper level of reality that most people never even consider because they're so hypnotized by the world of effects. Behind the scenes of this practice, you're training your consciousness to operate from a completely different vantage point. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, tossed around by whatever conditions happen to appear in your life, you're consciously aligning yourself with the creative principle that actually produces those conditions in the first place. Think about the profound impact this has on your journey through life. When you approach challenges from the consciousness of cause rather than reacting from the level of effect, solutions appear that were invisible before. Resources show up that seemed unavailable from the limited perspective. Possibilities emerge that couldn't exist in separation consciousness. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't make your human experience suddenly perfect or problem-free, but it fundamentally alters how you experience those challenges. What once felt like an exhausting uphill battle against impossible odds begins to feel like a natural unfolding of something that was always trying to express itself through your life. You stop experiencing yourself as a separate human, desperately struggling to connect with some distant divinity. Instead, you recognize yourself as divine expression, temporarily having a human experience, learning, growing, and discovering itself through the unique perspective of your individual journey. The problems don't necessarily disappear, but you approach them from recognition of wholeness rather than from separation and lack. And that shift in consciousness makes all the difference between struggle and flow, between anxiety and peace, between limitation and possibility. If you're ready to live from cause, write in the comments, "I see beyond effects." If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I want you to know that's not by accident. Something in you recognized the truth we've been exploring together, and that recognition is already beginning to shift how you experience your spiritual journey. This understanding of what Jesus truly meant when he said, "You are gods," isn't just information. It's transformation waiting to unfold in your consciousness. I create these videos because I've witnessed how profoundly life changes when this truth moves from concept to lived experience. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, I'd love to have you as part of our community. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the insights we explore each week, practical spiritual wisdom that actually shifts how you navigate real life, not just theory that sounds good but leaves you unchanged. And let me know you made it to the end by writing in the comments, "This message found me." I read these comments, and there's something powerful about declaring your recognition of truth. It anchors it deeper in your consciousness. If this video created a shift in how you understand your divine nature, tap that like button. It helps this message reach others who are ready to hear it, people who are tired of approaching spirituality from separation and are ready to recognize what they've always been. There's a video right here that takes this understanding even further, exploring how to practically apply this consciousness of divine identity in healing and manifestation. Click and continue with me there, because what we've uncovered today is just the beginning of what becomes possible when you truly grasp that you are gods.